Hi, this is Dr. Karen from the EPIC Foundation, which stands for Empowering People with Invisible Chronic Illness. I want to thank you for joining us today. I know that people are going to be coming in as the live goes on. So I just want to thank you for coming here today and joining us with what I call Afternoon with an AI Thriver, and you'll learn all about her. I'm really, really, really excited. She will tell you more about her, but she is a really cherished person with the EPIC Foundation. This is our Director of Health Services Administration, and we are so excited to interview with you today. So we will get started. And, as time goes on, people will comment and I'll read the comments to you.
Oh, cool.
But just to get some things out of the way, if you're not signed up with StreamYard, which is the platform that we're using, you guys, if you make a comment, I might not be able to see your name. Like if you're commenting from Facebook, I won't be able to see your name until I get on Facebook later, which I'm not on Facebook right now. So please excuse me if I don't know exactly who you are. You can go on StreamYard and give them permission to, show your name when you make a comment, and that way I will see your name. I believe if you comment from our YouTube channel, I will see your name, so I will be able to speak to you directly. So that will be good. Speaking of YouTube, YouTube is a great way that we share and increase awareness of chronic illness and invisible chronic illness. So I would love it if you can like this video with, our AI Thriver, if you can share it, if you can subscribe and hit the notification button, and that will tell you when we have videos coming in the future. So that's housekeeping stuff out of the way. I will go on to allow this wonderful person to introduce yourself. So why don't you start by telling us who you are, what your name is, your age is, and a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Chanelle. I'm Chanelle Curtis, and as you mentioned, I'm the Director of Health Services Administration with the EPIC Foundation, and also one of your personal friends. I mean, I feel like our friendship comes before everything.
It sure does, yes.
And I just turned 31 this year. So, and we're going to get into a lot more about me.
Happy birthday. That was in February.
Yes, it was.
And it's great to celebrate birthdays. I strongly believe in celebrating life. So that's a beautiful thing. So, and as you mentioned, and I should have mentioned this, you and I have known each other for over a decade.
Yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe that.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Amazing, but time.
That time flies. It really does. Okay, yeah. So thank you so much for joining us and being with us today. I'm really excited. So, okay, let's just dig into this interview here. I would like to know if you're married. So if you can tell our audience if you're married, and if so, I'd love to hear a little bit about your husband and love story.
I'm married. Yes, I am. I've been married to my husband we just celebrated our 6th wedding anniversary on the 11th. So
congratulations.
Thank you. We've been married for 6 years. We've been together for like 10 years. Yeah. Crazy. My husband's very private person, but we met at work back when we used to work at Best Buy together. So that's where we met. And he's been a constant support, which obviously I know you know this, and anybody else who has chronic illness, is that pretty much the top quality we look for in partners is that it's all good when I'm dressed up with the makeup on and cute, but can you handle when I'm I can't get out of bed, or if I need my medicine in the morning. So he's passed all those tests. He's an incredible support for me. So we've been together for a long time.
That is a long time. Congratulations and happy anniversary. That's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
As you just mentioned, when we have, and this is the reason why I asked this question, because, sometimes we guard our hearts because, and we'll get more into this, You know, when we have chronic illness, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who walk out of our lives. And we go through a lot of loss. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, that's why I touch on the love story and the, you know, as you mentioned, you know, the person who's like your ride or die, that's the person who like isn't just there when you're looking cute and, you know, everything's great, but they've seen some things. And so, you know, it's a beautiful thing. I imagine you guys have been through a lot of ups and downs.
We have, and we're going to get more into like my personal health history, but it's funny because I don't know, I guess when you just get to that age where you've been with someone for so long, he actually hasn't seen me at my worst. And that's simply because like he's seen me pretty low, but I know you know this because our health histories are almost identical. But when I first got sick, I was very young. I was like 15 or 16. So I didn't know who Brandon was. I didn't know who my husband was because we hadn't met yet. But so he may not have seen me at my very, very worst, but he's certainly seen me down, very far down. But it's funny just because, you know, having known someone for so long, sometimes I forget that, you know, he didn't know me when I had, he's never seen me with Cushing's disease. He's never seen me with Cushing's disease. But, you know, he's definitely seen me with Addison's disease, which I think is a lot in itself.
Yes. Yeah. So that's definitely something we will touch on later as we get into your health history. That's a great point, is that he hasn't seen you with the illness in full manifestation, right? So he hasn't seen that, but certainly within the context of knowing you and your marriage, he's seen the highs and he's seen the lows.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Which can be a lot.
Yes.
A lot in and of itself, for sure. Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about, you mentioned Cushing. And a lot of people think about Cushing's as the fat disease when they hear about cortisol, and excuse my language, but that, you know, that's the language that's used.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when they hear the term cortisol, a lot of people think about this commercial, which is unnerving now that I know what cortisol does. But the commercial that says, "Do you have extra belly fat?"
Oh, yes, I've seen that many times.
You know, at 2:00 in the morning with insomnia, that's when these commercials come on. You know, if you have extra belly fat that you can't get rid of, then cortisol is the issue. Take this supplement. And so, you know, you come across a lot of magazine articles and things of that nature that tell you, just do this and you'll lower your stress and your cortisol. So, you know, do you want to take just a brief second to inform our audience about what Cushing's is, what you actually went through, and what the actual purpose of cortisol is in the body?
Sure. So my favorite topic. So I'm going to try to also kind of apply this to myself. So kind of looking in like information, but also how it affected me across my health history. So, people do not have chronic illness, like normal people, air quotes around normal people, who do not experience chronic illness, their endocrine systems are usually intact. So that includes like your thyroid, thymus glands, your ovaries, your testes, your pituitary gland, your adrenal gland. So those are just some of the glands that are part of your endocrine system. So what happens with Cushing's disease is that typically, there's different forms of Cushing's disease, but typically it can be caused by a tumor either on your pituitary gland or your adrenal gland. So the type that I have and the type that you also had, Karen, is the type where you have a very small benign tumor on your pituitary gland. And the tumor, as I mentioned, it's benign. So it's not the tumor itself that is causing issues, but it is the placement of the tumor in your gland. So your pituitary gland is so small so that if you have a tumor in it, it can be devastating. So it causes these chemical signals in your body to not respond as they properly do. So if you don't have chronic illness, if you don't have any other underlying health issues, when you're stressed, and I know people think when you think cortisol, a lot of people think fight or flight, because that's how it's talked about in the biological sense. So when you are stressed, and there's positive stress and there's negative stress, like if you're getting married tomorrow, or if you're just getting married 6 months from now,
Yeah.
experiencing some positive stress, some negative stress, but it's stressful. If you're on a roller coaster ride, that typically for a lot of people, for me, it's fun. I love roller coaster rides, but you're experiencing stress. So you experience stress in so many different ways. There's positive and negative, but when you are experiencing any type of stress, your cortisol will rise and fall. And it rises and falls naturally throughout the day. But if, a bear comes running at you, your cortisol is going to rise so that your body can get out of that situation. And what cortisol is really, really good at doing is holding on to things. So it will cause your blood pressure to spike. It will cause your body to hold on to fat stores, because if you're thinking about the evolution of humans and how we were when we were hunters and gatherers, if you're out there hunting and you have your prey that's just turned around and chased you, and you don't have, if you're relying on your hunting and gathering for your sustenance, typically you don't have stores of food. So if you're in a situation where you have to run or you have to go, your body needs to hold on to energy so that you can make it, so that you can survive. So that has translated to today, where we experience all kinds of stress, work stress, life stress, personal stress, injuries. When those things happen to us, we still have preserved that system within our bodies as humans. And so our cortisol will rise. And for normal people, it will fall again when everything is okay and when you're safe. In the context of Cushing's disease, when you have a tumor or any kind of issue that is causing that rise of cortisol, there's no off switch. It's basically just cortisol all day, all night. Cortisol has other roles, such as it governs your circadian rhythm. So that natural feeling that you get in the morning of, oh, okay, it's time for me to wake up. This is apart from, our alarms.
Yeah.
If you ever, like on the weekend, you sleep in maybe, and then you just naturally wake up, that is your circadian rhythm. So cortisol does a lot of things, but like I said, when you have Cushing's disease and you have an interruption in your normal endocrine function, it's literally just cortisol raging all day, all night. And the unfortunate part about cortisol is that while it is everybody needs cortisol to live. While it is vital to our systems and our functions as humans, too much of anything is not a good thing. And cortisol is a catabolic hormone where it breaks down tissues. So your muscle, your skin, like all kinds of your hair, like all of your tissues just become weakened. And so I can go into this later, but it translates into, it breaks down your body because too much of that, it's not good.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that, because it just puts into perspective, how vital this hormone is that we don't even think about.
Yeah, most people never think about it ever.
Right. Never. We just take it for granted, right? That our bodies just kind of work the way that they're supposed to work. Now, you had pediatric Cushing's.
I did.
Which is sometimes the diagnostic process can be even, more horrific for some patients, because doctors really don't know to look for it in pediatric patients. But you mentioned that you were 15, 16 years old, and during a really huge developmental stage in your life. Here you were developing these symptoms. I mean, I can't even imagine, because I went through it as an adult.
Right.
And it actually kind of makes me emotional. So please, please
Oh,
bear with me here.
all
I
the
know
time, to
it's
be
I
very
mean,
honest
it's
with you.
your story, and
Yeah.
I'm not stealing the spotlight on your story, but because I know
No.
you so well, and I know your tenacity and your
And you've been
resiliency and
through
everything.
what I've been through, just in a different phase of life. Right.
Yeah, yeah, and I know you personally, and
Mhm.
I'm just in, you know, that I'm in awe of
Yes.
you as a person. Can you? But I'm crying, but our audience has no idea why I'm crying. So can you just tell us what that did to you,
Ooh, okay.
developing these symptoms at
Yeah.
that age?
So I will start by adding context about what my
Sure.
life was like before that happened. So
Yes.
to give that contrast, before I had Cushing's, I was an incredibly energetic, always doing something, always on the go, just like a ball of energy type person. That's definitely who I was when I was younger. I was in so many activities. I've danced for like 20 years. So dance is something that was a constant in my life.
Yeah.
Growing up, I was in gymnastics, I was in Girl Scouts, I was in like really involved in church when I was younger. I was just very involved in a lot of things. I had a lot of energy, and my mom and my dad picked up on that very early. And so they have found all the outlets for my energy. But
Mhm.
as I started getting to my early teen years, I was still involved with dance. As I said, it's been a constant in my life for a long time. I had also kind of moved on to I did step team in high school. I did cheerleading as well. I was really into cheerleading, very into school, very much into my grades, very kind of obsessed with like my grades and doing well in school. So that's kind of who I was. A student, like kind of social butterfly, friends with everyone, just that kind of person. So that's who I was. Um, when I first started experiencing, honestly, like first symptom I remember was I just started gaining a little bit of weight. And, when you're 15 going on 16, there's nothing wrong with that. That's totally normal. I remember my pants weren't fitting the way that they used to. And I guess coming from the size that I've always been I was very thin when I was younger. So me gaining a little bit of weight was like not a huge deal because I probably could have stood to gain a little bit of weight.
Mhm.
So like my thighs getting bigger, like things that girls particularly
Yeah.
focus. Oh God, this is weird, but okay. And kind of just like it felt like growing pains at first. Emotionally, there was a lot of emotional changes. I mean, I was already kind of a semi angsty teenager, but I was all of a sudden just way more sensitive about certain things, like way more reactive to things. Just like kind of angry all the time. Like again, this doesn't sound like anything crazy for a teenager, but
Mhm.
those were the beginning things that I was starting to experience. Then it started becoming issues with my sleep. It was like insomnia, getting tired in the middle of the day, like things that, again, it doesn't sound like a crazy issue. It just sounds kind of like growing pains, right?
Mhm.
So, to be honest with you, it kind of was like a whirlwind. I remember, like, truly, the first part of all this is I just remember, like, okay, I'm gaining a little bit of weight. My clothes aren't fitting the same way they used to. I'm kind of like an emotional wreck right now. That was kind of phase one.
Mhm.
And then the next phase was just straight up like I was unrecognizable, like in the face. My body was not the same at all. Like, not like in a sense of like, oh, Chanelle filled out. Chanelle's going through puberty. It's like, no, Chanelle looks 6 months pregnant. Chanelle's face is like a complete circle. Um, that's when like that was the height of my Cushing's, and that was probably around when I actually turned 16. um as I was going through your questions for the interview, one of them was like, describe the symptoms of Cushing's. And the way I basically explain that, just to kind of recap it and put it in a nutshell, is that like, especially for women, I think for anybody, but for
Yeah.
women especially, think of basically all the things that you hope never happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it sounds
Yeah.
so sad just because, you know, our society is a certain way and we have certain beauty standards and things like that. But for the average person, think about all the things that you're told you're not supposed to be. Think about
Mm-hmm.
all the ways that you know you're not supposed to look. Think about all the ways that society and the media market to you, you know, this is good and this is bad. Everything that falls within that bad category is basically what happens with Cushing's disease.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Weight gain, and in all the wrong places, again, wrong air quotes, because there is no wrong place to gain weight. People gain weight, we're humans, but all the societal, like the non-societally acceptable places to gain weight.
Yes.
Just acne, oh, horrific acne,
Yeah.
just everywhere. Hair falling out, stretch marks probably like an inch wide. Like, so everything that you don't or you're not supposed to, like every way you're not supposed to look, that's basically what happens with Cushing's, and it's like almost overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyone is free to, you know, research Cushing's, because there's a lot of symptoms. I mean, from external, internal, emotional, there's all kinds of symptoms.
Yeah.
But externally, I think, for everyone else in your life, externally is where like all the symptoms are like, what, is that person okay? Are they okay? Like, I just saw them like a week ago, and like it was actually so bad that one story that I remember is probably at the height of my Cushing's, when it was the worst. Now mind you, I basically became a hermit. I pulled out of all of my activities. I was not cheering anymore. I was not dancing anymore. I wasn't in chorus anymore. I used to sing, when I was younger. I wasn't doing really anything. I was at home doing my homework, trying to just pull through.
Yeah.
So I remember one time, my parents were obviously very concerned because they didn't know what was wrong with me. So I remember one time my dad talked me into going to the grocery store with him.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the grocery store, and we ran into somebody that used to go to our old church. And this is a woman that I've known for years, many, many, many years. She walks up to my dad and she's like, "Oh, hi, Rufus. How are you? How's the family?" And I'm standing right there. And I noticed that she's like not looking at me, like not addressing me. And I'm like, and I remember like there was a moment, like a pause, and I was like, "Hi, how are you doing?" And then she looked at me like I almost startled her, like she didn't see me there.
Wow.
And my dad was like very uncomfortable, and he's like, "Hey, you know, this is Chanelle. She's, you know," and I hadn't seen her in a few years, so obviously like I grew, but I was also sick. And she looked at me and she goes, "That's not Chanelle."
Oh my goodness.
She looked right at me and she was like, "That's not Chanelle." And then she looked at my dad and she was like, "That's not Chanelle." And he's like, "Yes, this is Chanelle." And it was one of, and again, this happened probably, I think I was maybe like, I was probably going on, I definitely was like maybe 16 and a half when this happened.
Yeah.
So, and I'm 31 today. So that's something that I will never forget. So it just irrevocably changes you in like almost every negative way that you can think, all at once, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, as the person going through it, I mean, you know, you don't even recognize yourself.
Oh,
because
yeah.
it changes everything about you. And the interesting thing is, some people say, "Well, what makes this an invisible illness?" And I'll just say this, because you know, you point on things that are very visible, right? Someone looks at you, but as you just pointed, and they see these changes, as you just pointed out, though, they don't attribute it to an illness. So someone will look at you and say, "Oh my God, you've been eating all these candy bars," or whatever other ignorant comments that you've probably heard throughout the years. And they, especially in our fat shaming society, fat phobic society, and food shaming society that we live in,
Yes.
you know, people will automatically attribute it to, "Oh, well, they're big and they've got a round face and they've got a big belly because of their diet and exercise." But what makes this an invisible chronic illness is that no one will look at you and say this is attributed to an illness.
Right. And let me say this, and you did a great job of bringing me there, because the way that to very curtly, simply answer that question, what makes this an invisible illness? What makes it an invisible illness is because so many of the symptoms of the disease
Yes.
are things that people regularly contribute to personal moral failing.
Yes.
So there are certain people in society who are just invisible just because of who they are. And this isn't even like about health at all. Like, there are people in this society who are invisible because of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Fat people, people who identify as genders that do not conform to binaries.
Yeah.
And go on and on and on. There are people that are othered and erased for so many different reasons, depending on the situation. But when you have a society that contributes, like, the only answer to why you are this way is because you've personally done something wrong, or you've personally failed, or you've personally made this mistake. That's why this illness that is just so, honestly, it's so highly visible. Like, every single symptom that I had, it's like I couldn't go a week without discovering something new on myself.
Yeah.
It was something that I could, like, not hide. It was something that I could not, like, and again, I'm a teenager. So it's like, if the average teenager gets like a pimple right here, they're just like freaking out. How can I fix this? How can I hide this? So, like, when your whole body feels like the pimple, it's like, how do I hide myself? How do I hide myself? When you're like, everybody's always constantly judging you in your appearance, what you're wearing, like, especially in high school. So that's the reason why this illness with such highly visible symptoms is an invisible illness, because you get lumped into a group of people who are already erased.
Yes.
They're already marginalized. So and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that the average fat person, when they go to a doctor, the number one issue is, oh, well, if you just lose weight, then, you'll be fine. You could go in there with a broken arm and they're just like, okay, lose weight and your bone will heal right up. Like, that's not how it works. So when you are in a situation where your symptoms manifest in a certain way that is not attractive in a society that tells you that you're not attractive, or it's something that just people just don't like for reasons that they can't really explain, that's why this is an invisible illness.
Yes. Yes. So eloquently stated. I mean, I could not have said that better myself. Yes. Marginalized folks who feel invisible, who are invisible,
who are erased, literally.
Who are erased.
And for me, and this is something I talk about a lot in my own personal, like, amongst my friends and things like that, because if you can't tell by this point, I'm very, very into, social justice and things of that nature. But one thing that I have now, I personally, when I say fat people, and I just want to be very clear, this is because of the learning and the listening that I have done from people who literally are like, I'm fat. I want to be called fat. I don't want to be called this. I don't want to be called that. That's who I am. And there's nothing wrong with the word fat, because the word fat has been so stigmatized and it's so stigmatizing. So that's what I mean when I say that. But one thing that I've definitely learned in my years is that it's very unfortunate that ableism, which is the condition by which people who are able-bodied, who don't experience mental health issues or chronic health issues, are able to basically use their able-bodied privilege to contribute to the oppression of people who are disabled or who do have mental health issues. So that's what I mean when I say ableism. It's interesting to me how ableism can apply to people who may not even be disabled. So going back to, like, just even a perfectly healthy fat person. Yes, fat people can be perfectly healthy, for those who may not know. Even a perfectly healthy fat person going to the doctor often will experience ableism, and they're not even disabled. So all those intersecting factors are the reasons why certain things, it's like, it's crazy. You think that, like, you would assume that like if you have Cushing's, obviously there's a weight gain, typically a weight gain element there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm increasing in size. I'm taking up more space. You would think that you would be able to see it even more clearly. And
Yes.
oftentimes those biases that are so deep and inherent within the American medical system particularly are the exact reasons why people don't get the help that they need, diagnoses that they need.
Yeah, and what a great point. And I knew we were going to go there, here with our interview, because we, this is what we do.
Yep.
For those of you who are wondering, we have these conversations all the time.
Yeah.
And so we are personally invested in waking people up. So, we always go here. So I love that.
I don't even think I really even went that deep. So listen.
Look, now see, that's the thing. This might be surface for us, but for a lot of people out there, okay, I mean, but they're hearing some things.
A lot of people just have never heard or considered any of these words, these terms. So I understand that, you kind of have to tread lightly and kind of meet people where they are and educate them to the fact that, like, listen, you may have thought this, but this is actually how it really is.
Yes.
As marginalized people, I mean, clearly we're marginalized in certain ways. And we are in a position to tell people, hey, there's an experience out there that you haven't considered. And I'm actually an expert on it because I've lived it. So.
Absolutely. And we are experts. When we live through a journey, we are the experts of that thing that we've gone through. Absolutely. Yeah. So, it's interesting, you brought up the physicians and their biases and, how they behave towards people that they deem overweight and unhealthy. And what's always interesting to me is people often wonder, a lot of folks have a very hard time getting diagnosed. And they often wonder, it doesn't cost the doctor anything to run labs. It's not personally impacting their lives. Like, what is the resistance? And, for years, and I want to do further research on this as the foundation has the opportunity to have resources to do more research. But the thoughts that I have, include this idea that even though medical doctors have an intellectual knowledge that Cushing's disease or Cushing's syndrome causes high cortisol levels, and that the weight gain, if we just look at that one overt symptom, that the weight gain is not dependent on diet and exercise, right? We've touched on this a little bit. It is based on the levels of cortisol. It is caused by the levels of cortisol in the body. Even though medical doctors have an intellectual knowledge of this, there is still this unconscious, subconscious need to project blame onto the patient and to still go through the whole diet and exercise spiel. I mean, for a lot of people, even after a diagnosis, it's like this internal battle, inside these medical doctors. And it's because we know per research that people who are deemed healthy and thin, and that's how they sort of measure health, are treated way better in the medical system than folks who are considered in life.
Yeah.
But a medical doctor, I grew up, my mom taught me, God rest her soul, she said, a medical doctor's word is bond. I mean, you go to a medical doctor because you want help.
Right.
And you think what they're going to tell you is going to help you.
Right.
Yet I had a medical physician who I trusted for years tell me if I just run on the treadmill faster, that will solve all my woes. Chanelle, run on a treadmill faster. This is why I'm going to someone who went to medical school. So it's the whole phenomenon is just unbelievable.
Here's my thing is that one thing that I definitely learned on my journey as I was going through doctors, specialists, really. One thing that people have to remember is that doctors themselves are human, and no matter how we try to elevate them, and I think a lot of it is the media. I mean, I know. I used to watch House. I loved House. I love the show
Yeah.
House. All kinds of like medical shows and things like that that kind of perpetuate doctors as gods, as infallible, as people that don't make any mistakes, as people that are experts on everything. Now, mind you, if you're going to an endocrinologist and they're the expert on your hormones, but that doesn't mean that that one individual human who is an expert on hormones hasn't formed biases against people that look a certain way, that are a certain size. I spent basically my entire undergrad when I got my degree for health administration, applying my own research and my every paper that I wrote, every report that I did was focused on the issues pertaining to Black people in America, like the health issues of African Americans, the health issues of African American women, the medical racism. So that was kind of my whole focus going through my schooling. So if we know that the American medical system has serious issues, a serious race issue, then it stands to reason that there's also a serious issue with people of certain sizes, people of certain genders. There's all kinds of things, because so much of the medical knowledge that we have, like BMI, for example, which should never, ever, ever be used and applied to a single human being, because BMI, the purpose, the utility of BMI had more to do with talking about population sizes and being used in the insurance field. So like looking at like whole bodies of people, not one person. So and that's the things that BMI is still referred to as some kind of gold standard, when it should never be used to talk about an individual. It just shouldn't.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's incredible because, when we were, just a sidebar, when we were trying to get different members of my family vaccinated for COVID-19, and I was the first one to get vaccinated. Long story short, we were trying to figure out what category my 18-year-old daughter belonged to, and my husband and everything, and he was the last priority, and they have both gotten their first vaccine. So yay, I'm really happy about that.
Yeah.
But, we were looking through criteria, and one of them, so Rush Medical University sent me an email, and they were like, oh, these are the people who can get vaccinated now. So I'm looking through it, and I'm like, my daughter's been diagnosed with asthma. So that was one thing. And then we looked at they actually listed obesity. Okay, so obesity is considered a criteria for being a higher priority with the vaccine. And it listed BMI. And my husband's gonna kill me. I'm sorry, Craig, but I was like, Craig, let's calculate your BMI. Now you've seen my husband virtually. Like,
oh yeah, I have.
I mean, he's like a really healthy guy. I mean, we met we've been together for like almost 23 years. And, we met in college, like people called him Hercules. I mean, it's hilarious. He's still in really great shape.
Right.
And yet, according to his BMI, I'm sorry, Craig, but I was like, oh my God, you are considered overweight. Like, this makes no sense. What chart?
Well, the reason why it makes no sense is because it makes no sense.
Yeah.
BMI does not factor in things such as muscle mass. BMI does not factor that in. So they're literally, in Craig's defense, there are literally bodybuilders who, if they were who are like 10% or less body fat, who based on just their weight to height ratio are considered grossly obese.
Yes.
Because they have so much mass. It doesn't factor in your muscle mass. So it's really just, it could be thrown out today and it would just do so much better for everyone if it were.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, and the thing is, I'm only saying that to say, because,
Yeah.
some people watching know my husband, and
Yeah.
like, he's in really, he's just a really healthy guy, but that bothered him,
Right. And
just,
that's the thing, is that it's really more about, it's so sad to me because I'm about to get real deep. So really, in this country, specifically America, the whole American ethos is so strongly based in individualism and the sole responsibility of the one person. So when a whole country is built on that idea and that ideal, that everything you do in life comes down to every individual action that you've done. Systems don't matter.
yeah,
History doesn't really matter.
yeah,
Like, when you have that mindset,
yeah,
that's how, and it may seem really weird for some people to hear this, but like, that same very general line of thought can be, you can look at that as evidence as how we get to a place where we're sitting here calculating BMI,
yeah,
and doctors are able to almost weaponize that against people and say, well, the entire reason why you are this way is because you eat too much, because we feel like shame is an effective tool to get people to change, when that is like the furthest thing from the truth.
yeah,
Shame literally does not help. Shame actually typically makes things worse. Like, if you are to look at like research on eating disorders, it's a well-known fact and a well-documented fact that like eating disorders in children, that's a really, really one that stands out for me. If you look at the research, when you start talking negatively about your body in front of your children, that changes them. When you start talking about what your child needs to eat, or if they don't need to eat something, or if you start commenting on their weight or how they look in their clothes, that changes them.
yes,
You start shaming them for what they have on their plate, or how they're eating, what they're eating, how much they're eating, that will literally raise their rate significantly of experiencing an eating disorder in their lifetime.
yes,
And eating disorders are the number one, the most fatal mental health disorder ever. So you literally have the power to determine whether or not your child will die because they're scared of being fat. So shame doesn't help anyone. And going back to doctors being humans, we have to remember that just because this doctor is I will never take away a doctor's, the time and the energy and the stress and the financial, investment and everything that they did to acquire this knowledge of being a doctor. I literally don't have the power to take that away. I always used to say that is whenever I encountered a doctor, now mind you, going back to my personal story, when I first started putting together that I had Cushing's disease, it was literally because I being a very high strung individual that I was as a teenager, I had already started making lists of my symptoms. I literally had lists of symptoms because I was just like, I can't keep track of what's going on with me.
yeah,
Luckily I did that because it came in handy later. But when I started meeting with doctors, I'm a very outspoken individual. And I have been for my entire life. When I started meeting with doctors, like, I had done my own Google research and stuff. I found the words. I found there was a couple of things that kind of I fit into, but Cushing's disease was definitely on that list. So that was on my radar. When I started seeing doctors, sometimes it was just like, first of all, being Black in the medical system and using my voice to advocate for myself, that didn't sit well with a lot of doctors. And I had the problem at 16 being like, you know what? Can you just write me a referral to the next one? Because I don't want to waste time. Like, that was my problem. It's like, if you're not going to listen to me, then I certainly can find somebody who will listen. And so what I have learned across my journey is that I find it interesting. Now, this is not to say that all doctors are bad. This is not all specialists are not bad. But there are definitely, these people are people. And so they have their own biases that they carry with them. They have their own beliefs that they carry with them. And a lot of times some of their practice even confirms that a bias that is not true. Some of their practice will confirm that for them, or even strengthen their biases. And so we have the right to, if we sense that, to move on. And something I've used to tell, something I've told doctors straight to their faces, especially if they have an issue with me offering my ideas or putting my input in it about my lived experience with rare disease, is that, well, ultimately, and now mind you, I just got my bachelor's degree last year. I'm 31. So my health history has been a huge monkey wrench in my plan. If I had it my way, I'd already have my PhD, 10-year-old me, if I had it my way. But one thing I find interesting is that if a doctor with literally a doctorate's degree and years and years and years, maybe even decades of medical practice is threatened by little old me with my bachelor's degree, that's a red flag for me. You can't be threatened by me because I don't have the power to take away anything from you. When I walk into a doctor's office, there's almost always a power imbalance simply because most doctors are males. Most doctors are white males. So that's a built-in power imbalance. Then throw in the education. I don't have a doctorate degree. I have my little bachelor's degree. So when I walk into a doctor's office, 9 times out of 10, there's a power differential, and I'm at the short end of that power differential. So I don't have the power to take away anything from a doctor. So that will be like, I guess if we're giving out advice for people, just like, it's just the understanding that when you walk into a doctor's office, typically you don't hold the power. The power that you do have, though, the power that the minute power that you do have in that conversation, though, is that you get to determine if you're going to continue to go forward. So if you have a doctor who is shaming you, who's blaming you, those are your red flags to move on, get a second, third, whatever opinion.
Yes, absolutely. How powerful those words are, because we just, we do a lot of the time, we in general feel helpless when there's that power differential.
Yeah.
But you, Chanelle, became a strong self-advocate from a very, very young age.
Yes.
And ultimately, you did receive a diagnosis and treatment. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what that journey was like, finally receiving a diagnosis, and what has happened throughout treatment? Because it's not simple either. It's not simple as a diagnosis, treatment, recovery, and then we're back to normal, right?
Not. I used to think it was for like a brief moment, but no, it is not. So as I kind of alluded to in my past little rantings thus far, is that what I ended up doing is that once I started really, really getting like to where people were kind of, at this point, again, I was still a teenager. So it was getting to the point where a few like very close friends of like our families started to get concerned about me because of how I looked. I looked so different. So once I started like really realizing that, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, this isn't me going crazy. This is like really actually something happening to me. I started, my little personal research. I'll never forget the day that I first Googled Cushing's, because the first thing, the top line, the first search was equine Cushing, which is Cushing's in horses. So apparently disease is very common in horses. And I was like, crazy. I cannot have a disease that horses get.
Yes.
So I started kind of doing my own little due diligence. And again, I was a very studious young girl. So I basically, when I started doing this research, I learned very quickly that if I was going to be taken seriously, that I had to get serious. So I took every time I went on Google, I know like people like to joke how like whenever something happens, they end up on WebMD and then they're convinced they have cancer. That's not really what it was like for me. I really had a long list of symptoms that I had. I started like putting the symptoms together, searching them, and that's how I came upon Cushing's. The final nail in the coffin for me being convinced that it was Cushing's was literally coming home from school one day, turning the TV on, and Mystery Diagnosis comes on. And Charmin McGraw, her story of her Cushing's disease, I watched the entire episode and I was like, okay, I have Cushing's disease. So I was sure of it. The battle was just convincing a doctor. And so it was kind of a struggle. I had my actual doctor, she was great. She was really great. She was like, I don't really know what's going on with you, Chanelle. Because I remember telling her, I was like, honestly, I've been doing some research and I think I have a brain tumor. That's literally what I said. And she was just kind of taken aback because she was just, she was a PCP. PCPs don't specialize in this kind of stuff. So she was just like, well, you know what, Chanelle? I believe you. So I'm going to send you to a pediatric endocrinologist. And I thank God for her every day because, and I think what helped, honestly, is that she was a Black woman. She's a Black female doctor. And so that's why I think I was believed. So she referred me to a pediatric endocrinologist. And I remember I was sitting there on the table and the doctor came in and she was so sweet, but I think she was startled at just how bad my case was. She walked in and she almost gasped a little bit. She was like, sweetie, tell me what's wrong. And I was like, I have Cushing's. I know I have Cushing's disease. It can't be anything else. It can't be. And she was like, I think I agree with you.
Wow.
And that was just hearing that was cathartic. I think I cried. I'm pretty sure I cried. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I really cried because at that point I was just determined. I was so determined. I was convinced that I was just going crazy. Yeah. So from there, I got my first ever MRI of my head, my pituitary in specifically. And that showed a 6 millimeter benign adenoma or tumor in my pituitary gland. And that's, for context, about the size of a pencil eraser. So like that much of a tumor in my pituitary gland, which had caused that much destruction of my body, of my mind, of my just emotions, everything. And so from there, and also I can't stress enough how incredibly privileged I was at the time, being under my parents' insurance. My dad works for the federal government, so we basically had the best insurance that money could buy. And from there, I literally, because I was with Kaiser Permanente, because they didn't really have anybody doing high level, pituitary surgeries, I got to go to Johns Hopkins Hospital. And that's where I encountered the first people that I just was like, they were talking and I was hanging on every word because they were just so knowledgeable about Cushing. Yeah. And, by this time I was incredibly knowledgeable about Cushing's as well, but still, it was like the upper echelon. I was entering a whole new level of experienced professionals. And I had 2 pituitary surgeries with Johns Hopkins. My tumor was just aggressive, which is why I had to have 2. And then that turned into my tumor was more aggressive than we thought, because the third time around when it grew back, I ended up just opting to have a bilateral adrenalectomy, which is BLA, which is having both my adrenal glands removed. And then from that day forward, I no longer was living with Cushing's. I was living with Addison's disease. So it completely got rid of Cushing's, which was great. But I traded one chronic illness for another, one that is I would say slightly not as bad. And then, and then the only other thing I did after that was a few years later in 2014, I got cyberknife radiation because I was still experiencing a little bit of tumor growth. So I wanted to make sure that didn't get out of hand. And I had, I think it was 4 or 5 days of radiation therapy. And that was a really positive experience. I mean, I got a little bit sick, but it was very interesting experience. So that's pretty much all of my procedures that I've had thus far.
Yeah, it's interesting how we sort of sometimes can just tell it just call it
Like it's
matter
like
of fact.
nothing. Like, yep.
Yeah, it's so nonchalant. And then people are like, wait, you had how many? Wait, like,
It's like, while you're telling that, people are like looking, kind of trying to look at your head, like, nope, babe, the surgery was through my nose. There's no scars. Sorry.
yeah, right.
All
But
the time. When I say brain surgery, it's like people are like, "Oh, where's your scars at?" I don't have them.
yeah, don't have them. But it's just interesting, like
Mhm.
how we, you know, we've lived this life, and so for us, telling the story, it's just like you tell it so many times.
Yeah.
I don't even think we even like um sometimes realize the trauma and everything
Ooh, yes.
we experienced from all this. I want to touch on when you said, because this is such an impactful part of your story, you traded
Mhm.
one illness for another.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't know that, Cushing's and Addison's are on opposite ends of the spectrum,
Yeah.
right? So
They're opposite.
Cushing's is the production of excess cortisol.
Mhm.
Addison's, a form of adrenal insufficiency, is the
Mhm.
lack of adequate cortisol production in the
Yes.
body.
Yes.
Adrenal insufficiency is life-threatening as well.
Yes. And going back to like my little spiel in the beginning about how cortisol itself works and how like the endocrine, like loose, very loose description of that. Yeah, that's the crazy part is that sometimes I just remember, I know you probably will totally agree with me when I say this, but I sometimes do think back to when I was just so sick with Cushing's disease. Like it was so bad, like high blood pressure. Like I couldn't sleep. I couldn't like you eat, you gain literally 15 pounds in like a week. It's like there's no amount of diet or exercise that will do anything.
Right.
Like I said, cortisol is so good at just making everything just you hold on to everything. Um,
Yes.
and you could die of heart complications, you could die of like high blood pressure complications. There's all kinds of ways in which when you have Cushing you can literally die. And I
Yeah,
don't like to talk about death a lot, but it's the truth.
it is.
And so when you're kind of at your just at the brink, at the edge, on your last string with Cushing's, it's like almost anything seems better.
Hmm.
And so, and I don't want to say that to say that like I made a mistake by getting my adrenalism, because I don't believe I made a mistake. What I made was the best, literally the best possible choice I could have made. Really,
That's right.
when you think
A
about it,
life-saving choice.
I made a life saving choice. But it's funny how
Right.
you can save your life. Like it's when the last option is to save your life by putting yourself in a life-threatening situation for the rest of your life.
Right. It's mind-blowing.
It's mind-boggling. Honestly, it's like
Yeah.
your choices are to die possibly within the next like 10 to 15 years, but like on the way down, you're literally just spiraling in every sense of the word,
Mhm.
externally, internally, mentally, emotionally. You can keep going down that path. Or
Yeah.
you can trade that in for a chronic condition that you can manage every day, and
Mhm.
you might be able to like have a great life, but like there's definitely going to be a lot of days where you're going to be just in bed not being able to do anything. Those are your choices.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, you could die.
And also that's that. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
die from that too. So
Die
it's
from that
really
too.
like the biggest gamble. Like it's almost
Yeah.
it's like a twisted game show where it's just like,
Yeah.
so I'm dying either way. So it's like, what's the best way to go down with the ship, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot, and I imagine it's a lot. By the time you had your BLA and radiation, all that, you were a young adult.
Yeah, I
When
was about 18, 17.
Yeah.
Yes. I had
Yeah.
my surgeries, my brain surgeries where I was 17 and 19 with my
Okay.
brain surgeries. I was 21 when I had my adrenal glands removed. I was
Yeah.
24 when I had radiation.
Yeah.
So
So
it's just
what?
like there's half my 20s.
Right. Yeah. And what difficult decisions. I mean, I remember, and like you said in the beginning of this, you and I have
Yeah.
very similar
Oh,
story.
almost identical. Yeah.
Yeah, I have not had radiation, but
Yeah, but
you
almost
know,
everything is the same.
yeah, I mean, and I just remember being in my 30s and having to make these really, really huge decisions.
Mhm.
And they do, when it's not a viable option to have another brain surgery or radiation,
Yeah.
and your life is literally slipping away. Yes,
Mhm.
they
Yeah.
say the last resort is let's cut the cortisol at its
Right.
source. Let's
Yep.
take out the adrenals. But by the way, you have to manage this for the rest of your life.
Right.
And we're not robots. And so
No. Oh,
we
no.
know what stress looks like.
Right.
We cannot necessarily always know what exact amounts of cortisol our bodies need to manage the stress.
Right. And for the audience, just to add a little bit of context, again, going back to my little explanation about how cortisol works. So for most, I would wager all of the audience, depending on who we're hitting, but for a lot of the audience, they literally don't know. Like this is their first time hearing about Cushing, maybe the first time hearing about Addison's. Um, think about just like a month in your life. Think about all the different things that just happen within a month in your life. Let's say you need to go to the dentist next week. The average person, cool. I mean, the average person is kind of scared of the dentist. Okay, so there's a little bit of stress there because we're a little bit scared. It's the drills, the needles. Okay, it's a little scary. But maybe the preparation that you do for that is like maybe the morning of or the night before you take an ibuprofen if you have like maybe a root canal or a tooth that needs to come out or a filling or a cleaning. So you start flossing. You maybe take a little bit of ibuprofen to prepare that if you're gonna have a needle, and that's pretty much it. But imagine that you literally need to get up, you need to take a shower, you need to mow the lawn, you need to go run 5 errands, and then you need to go to the dentist.
Mm-hmm.
We're preparing a week in advance for that.
Yes.
We're sometimes stress dosing just to go to, be a guest at a wedding because we know that we're going to be emotionally overcome. We are, God forbid you get an offender bender. It's like, you better like put some medicine under your tongue and just let it dissolve because it's literally like the stresses of everyday life can literally put us in bed for a week.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking like the most basic stuff.
Yeah. And those kinds of stressors, if we don't have enough cortisol in our bodies,
it can kill us.
It can kill us.
Yes.
The body produces up to 10 times the amount of your baseline levels of cortisol to compensate for physical and or emotional trauma or stress.
Yes.
So like you just mentioned, anything from good stress, going to a wedding to getting into a car accident.
Right.
In a normal person's body, that body starts pumping out all this cortisol so that the body doesn't go into shock. When an adrenal crisis is when the body doesn't have enough of cortisol and it goes into shock.
Right.
And that can be a life-threatening event. And unfortunately, we've lost a lot of people to adrenal crises as well. It's just incredible. We've only touched the surface of your story. And it's like, we got to do this again. I mean, let us know if you want a part 2, you guys, because I mean, we definitely need to do this again because it's just really important for people to understand.
Very quickly, I just want to give the audience or whoever was watching now or in the future, because I would love to do a part 2 if you would like to, but in between the time that I come back to wrap this all up, a little piece of homework that I have for anybody watching is just imagine if your body didn't breathe automatically. Think about that. Think about how many times you breathe in a day. Just inhale and exhale. Think about if that wasn't automatic. That a lot of the time is how aware Addisonians have to be about their own cortisol. It's a constant system of checking in, like, did I take enough? Am I okay? Am I going to be able to get out of bed tomorrow? That's the level of like hyper cognizance, hyper awareness of our own bodies. So think about that, just to get a little, just build a little bit of that empathy for people in your life who might have Addison's or any other disease, honestly, because really, once you start getting into these like high level, like very obscure diseases, at this point, we naturally have met people who have so many different kinds of illnesses. So if you've gotten to the level that me and Karen have ever gotten to with just our health, by this point you have about 30 friends with maybe 30 different illnesses, chronic or invisible. So all of us are in some state of hyper awareness of our bodies, not because we have to be, but also because we live in a society that doesn't necessarily guarantee anything for us. Our healthcare is tied to the work that you can do. And if you're literally not able to work, well, do you get healthcare? Maybe, maybe not. If you're not married to someone that works, can you get healthcare? Probably not. So when you live in this kind of world and you're living with these kinds of things, these are all the things that we are constantly thinking about. So I just want the audience to think about that and donate to the Epic Foundation. Donate to any foundation that supports people with chronic illness, whether it's visible or invisible, because we need it not only just for our own, to have these spaces to talk like this, but for research, to directly support people out there who need our help.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that. We have a couple of comments here that I would like to read. Yeah. So Jamie says, from the beginning, she said, yes, thank you, ladies, as we started out our conversation about, invisible chronic illness and fat phobia and all of that. And so I'm glad that, that resonated with you, Jamie, that we're speaking on these issues. She said later on in our live, Jamie says, always a paradox. We have to be deep. These topics and their connections have repelled everyone away from talking to me. You're so brave for speaking up. I'm giving it a break for a while because I was treated as an addict last time I called 911 for help with an adrenal crisis. Wow, wouldn't help use my Solucortef because I may hide heroin in it. Whoa. So much for making connections. This Jamie, if you're still on this,
wow, that is
medical steroids are literally not addictive.
First of all, for anybody who's ever been, because it's not only us who use steroids. Actually, things like prednisone, I currently take prednisone.
Right.
And me just saying prednisone, I know that there is a bunch of able-bodied people who have taken prednisone for many reasons.
Yeah.
Anybody who's ever been on steroid hormones, I've never in my life, the only people I hear talking positively about steroid hormones are people with Addison's, because we need it every day.
Right.
Never in my life have I heard an able-bodied person with any sort of issue, like inflammation issue in their body or like some kind of trauma where they've been prescribed a steroid hormone or a corticosteroid. They all hate it. Addicted to steroids? This is not like bodybuilding steroids. When we say steroids, we're not talking about
they're not anabolic steroids. We're
talking about prednisone, the thing that usually makes you gain a bunch of weight when you take it, that makes your cheeks real puffy. Nobody is addicted to that. Are you kidding me?
Or if you have a bad respiratory infection, people get
Nobody in their right mind is addicted or wanting or needing or wanting to have unlimited supplies of. That's crazy. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Yes. And this is not the first story that I've heard of. I mean, I've experienced it. Like I've experienced adrenal crisis, unfortunately, more times than I care about. And there are times where I've ended up unconscious and unable to speak for myself. And so my husband has literally had to fight. Not literally, okay.
But like have to speak up for you.
But like be very, very assertive, and then of course be perceived as aggressive. But that's a different story. Let's not go there. Let's not even go go there,
Right.
but assert our rights and my right, and has had to call my doctor in Seattle, who has like called the hospital and said, if you don't get this patient, my patient's the IV steroids in the next like 30 minutes, she will die.
Karen, do you know how many times I have gone to the ER and I have a medical alert bracelet? I'm very, at this point, everybody pretty much knows I'm very vocal. Do you know how many times I've gone to the ER for an issue and they don't even, I've had to reach inside of my own purse and give myself steroids. I don't even go, I honestly don't even go to the ER unless like it's something like some kind of freak incident has happened that doesn't really have anything to do. If I am not doing well and I sense adrenal insufficiency coming on, I don't call anybody but myself. I go get my pills and I start figuring out, okay, here's my stress dose for the next couple of days so that I don't literally not wake up.
Yeah. It's sad and it's tragic. And Jamie, you know, I know this sounds so corny, but we're here.
Yeah.
Like, please reach out. Like, we are here to support. We're here to help advocate, even if it's someone that you can just, text or call us or something, just to be like, look, I need I need validation, or I need someone to like be in this with me. Like, we don't want you to be alone in this. I mean, I am just like shocked that anyone would even suggest that you're hiding heroin.
That's a new one. That is a new, I've never
heard that before.
New one on me.
That is ridiculous.
Honestly, I'm the type of person, you send me the number of the person who told you that. I would love to just have a nice little talk with them on the phone.
Yeah, what hospital, what person, what physician? We will put a stamp on a letter. I'm telling you.
No problem. Let's have a talk. Let's have a chat.
Yes, because I mean, and I'm telling you, as our director of Health Services Administration, we will send somebody a letter.
Chat.
Look, we'll do
it. Jamie. Just sending my love to Jamie.
Terrible. It's terrible. Please don't. You said that you've given up on advocating for yourself. I
like to tell people because I know it can be so tiring. I understand wanting to give up. I truly do. And I think instead of giving up completely, maybe consider taking a break.
Yeah.
Take a break, gather your spoons, and maybe next time we can talk about spoon theory, but take a break, gather your energy, gather your spoons, and then maybe mark a day on your calendar where you're like, this is the day that I'm going to start it back up. Give yourself breaks. It's okay to take breaks. Don't put up on yourself. You need to, even if your break is a year, take that break for a year.
Yeah.
And pick a date where you're saying, you know what, maybe on this day, I will have the energy to start fighting for myself again, because you are worth fighting for, and you also are allowed to rest.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You are allowed to rest. And that is great advice. And, you know, let the people who are your advocates, you know, back you up. So, I mean, like, one of the things that, you know, I do is, you know, in my emergency kit or on my person, I have a letter from my local endocrinologist who defers to the expertise of my Seattle endocrinologist. But he's written me a letter describing what my symptoms are or how I present in an adrenal crisis. Because some of my, and we have to
honestly, sometimes, a lot of times, for many reasons, doctors and medical professionals just straight up don't believe people because of, like I said, certain stigmas. There's the stigma of substance use disorder. People get, again, back to the ethos of being personally responsible for things that you're not even really personally responsible for, or that kind of just go down a road where at a certain point you can't be personally responsible for. Substance use disorder is one of those things. You can't stop certain substances. You just can't biologically. So having that applied, that so many people are painted with a very broad brush that if you need help and you are consistently coming back for help, then you must be addicted to something. Like,
Oh yeah.
and if somebody won't believe you, honestly, if there's any professional, a nurse, or somebody in the ER, if somebody can write up a letter for you saying, you know what, tell them they won't listen to me, so I need you to be my voice.
Yes.
In writing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we did, because there was a period where like my thyroid levels were off, so it was impacting my cortisol levels, and we didn't know it at the time. So I was in crisis like every week for like 5 weeks straight. Well, my Seattle doctor, which is like almost 3,000 miles away from us, kept intervening. And the medical director at our local hospital had the nerve to be like, you know, we like, if you're not willing to use a local doctor, this was years and years and years ago, then we just can't help you because you don't trust our doctors. So we're not going to keep talking to the Seattle doctor. And this was the medical director of the ER. So at that point, I had been through a dozen local endocrinologists, and right?
I've seen them all. I've been to them all. Yeah.
So like, this was like my last resort, but I ended up getting with a local endo who's my endo to this day locally. Little cute little almost 80-year-old man.
Oh my gosh.
Taylor. He's so cute.
Fantastic.
And he's like, blankety blank. He calls me Dr. Thames. Like, he's the cutest guy. It's like, Dr. Thames, I don't know what the hell to do with you, but thank God for your Seattle doctor. This guy's got 50 years under his belt. And I love him because he says, like, I don't know it all. And my job is, right?
How rare is that in the medical field?
Yeah. So this is the man who wrote my letter. And so he's very well esteemed in our local community. And so he was able to speak to even some of the atypical symptoms, like in an Addisonian crisis, my blood pressure will spike high as opposed to dropping low. And that's called a paradoxical response.
That's
and
true.
And a lot of ERs don't know that. So in the beginning, they were saying, there's no, I mean, like, I'd be like unconscious, and they'd be telling my husband, there's no way she's in an adrenal crisis because
actually
blood pressure, right? So
I can't tell you how many times I have literally looked right into a doctor's face and educated them on something that they didn't know. A doctor. A doctor. Yeah. Crazy.
I carry I used to do this whenever I was hospitalized. I would put out this picture album of my journey with Cushing's, like maybe before Cushing's, during, after, and I literally just put it right on that like little tray where they put your hospital food.
Here, look at that.
Right? And it would like spread around where residents would come in. Hey, I heard that you have a photo album. I've never seen Cushing's before. Can I?
Oh, yeah. Literally, doctors literally just wanting to like pop in and say that they talked to the girl that had Cushing's. Like,
right. Yeah, it's crazy.
We're zebras.
I know, us zebras, right? So, Jamie, please consider reaching out. To Chanelle. I know that she will speak with you. And then another comment from Carol Thornton Curtis.
Oh my God.
You can tell us who she is, but I call her
your mother-in-law.
It's your mother-in-law. She's been on this whole time. We love you. I call you Mama Curtis.
Yes.
I stole your mother-in-law.
That's hilarious. Hi, Carol.
She said, thank you both for the insight and information. And we thank you for looking at this. Look, we want people to share this, right? We want people to, come on, help increase awareness. April is Cushing's Awareness Month. It's also Adrenal Disease Awareness Month.
But we're getting all done. Right. Two birds with one stone.
Right. So we're getting it all in. Someone else just commented. Simple Life. They call themselves Simple Life. Says, if it wasn't for Dr. Karen, I would have crashed and burned. Whew. Okay.
That's so sweet. You can do it. You can do it.
Okay. I'm sorry. Y'all gonna think I'm dramatic. I'm really, but it's
no. Let me read it. I can see this. Let me read it. Says, if it wasn't for Dr. Karen, I would have crashed and burned. I called her at 3:30 a.m. She was there for me, not an on-call doctor. So you literally were there for someone when they needed you, and a doctor wasn't.
Thank you, Zane.
Yep. Yeah. So this is why, and while Dr. Thames recovers, I just wanted to speak directly and say, this is why our voices matter so much. This is why our voices matter so much, and not just our voices. Like, if our voices aren't received, if we're not listened to, then nothing happens. This is why our voices, and you're listening, you're using whatever privileges that you have. Privileges are great. It would be great to not be, it would be great to not be disabled. It would be great to not have Addison's, but that's just the way my life is.
Yeah.
You are healthy. If you have a voice, if you have extra discretionary income to donate, if you have just anyone in your family, if you have time, if you have a shoulder to cry on, if you have anything that you can give to anyone in your life that will help them not crash and burn, to help them not be here tomorrow, then you got to use that. You just got to.
Absolutely. There's power in our voices.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a voice, use it. We are a voice for the voiceless, and we've used our past adversity to create opportunities to use our platforms and to use our voices. So, Chanelle, thank you for using your voice today.
Oh, you're welcome.
I know it's going to help so many people, not only the people who have tuned in, but the folks who will see this, because I mean, we literally reach thousands of people with these lives. So I'm so grateful of the reach that this will have. And we definitely need to do a part 2.
Sure. I mean,
we got to figure out when we're going to do it.
Yeah, we just got to get it on the schedule. That's all.
We just got to get it on the schedule and do it. And for those of you who don't know, Chanelle also has another segment called Ask Chanelle.
Yes.
Where, you know, she talks about some of the myths around nutrition and weight and health and things like that. So that is another thing that is really, really important. Really important conversations. Yes. I'm so grateful, you guys. Thank you so much.
Everyone who watched and commented, and everyone who will see this, I'm so glad that you're here.
Absolutely. We're glad that you're here. You are really incredible all by yourself. Together, we are epic. Every day. And can't wait to talk again.
Yes. Bye, Karen. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.